Hi there, Andrew here. I love to be entertained, but I have no patience. So I give every new show I watch only one episode to hook me. Welcome to Debut Review. Today I will be watching the first episode of Creepshow. Yes, Creepshow. It has returned. Of course, I didn't pay very close attention the last time it returned. Creepshow was a film-wise, came out in the early 80s. It was an anthology horror film, and if you know me, which you likely don't, I love anthology horror films. And I'm a pretty big fan of the original Creepshow. I also like the sequel, which came out later in the 80s, 5 years later, something like that. Stephen King and George Romero were involved with both of them, so they're pretty darn good. Not every episode is a winner, but there's some good stuff. The first one, I remember the sequel better. I think it came out in like 87 or so. So the first one came out in 82, somewhere thereabouts. I would have been 2 years old. So I was a little bit more familiar with the sequel. And the raft segment is probably my favorite. It's kids go to a lake. There's a goo monster, and they get eaten. So they're on a raft in the middle of the lake, and there's this like black oil sludge blob thing, and it picks them off the raft and eats them. And the last kid swims for shore, and he makes it, and he sits on the shore. I beat you, and then the whole thing just engulfs him like a wave, and then the camera pans to their car, and there's a no swimming sign. That's great. Love that. If I remember right, the first Creepshow had had a wraparound segment and 5 stories. The sequel only had 3, but its wraparound segment was actually cut back to between each story. I also really liked the wraparound segment because it did this mix of live action and animation, which I was really, really fond of. The Creepshow 2 had the one was the Native American statue in front of a convenience store comes to life and kills somebody. It's okay. Then the other one is, I think this woman like runs this dude over multiple times. I think she runs someone over, and then his ghost keeps popping up and is like, "Can I have a ride?" And she keeps running him over, and then it kills her. It's okay. I think originally they planned to have more episodes. They just ran out of money, so they kind of padded out the 3 that were there, which is why they don't work as well. Because kids, woman hits a hitchhiker and it terrorizes her. Statue kills people. Kids get eaten by a lake blob monster. That's not a half an hour long story, But the first one has some classics. It's also wildly different in tone. It has my favorite from that one is the one with Hal Holbrook and Adrienne Barbeau with the monster in a crate, which the guy feeds his wife to and then throws it in a lake or something. What else is in that one? There's one with Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen, where Leslie Nielsen kills Ted Danson and someone else by burying them up to their neck in sand and lets the tide come in over them. There's a old guy trapped in a room with a bunch of roaches. There's one actually starring Stephen King, some farm guy who finds a meteorite that takes over his body with vegetation. I love Creepshow's good horror anthology. They made the third one like in 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there. So this is somewhere in the 2000s. Never saw it. Romero and King had nothing to do with it. I don't know if it was any good, but Shudder now has Creepshow back, and I'm excited to check it out. It's a series though, so it's not an anthology, which is kind of disappointing, but that's okay. If you look at it as one whole show, then it's an anthology. That's what a television show is. It's a long-form anthology. All right, so Creepshow, the new anthology series. Okay, it is an anthology. The new anthology series based on the 1982 horror comedy classic, I think I got 1982 right, yay me, is still the most fun you'll ever have being scared. A comic book comes to life in a series of 12 vignettes over 6 episodes. Oh, okay, so we get 2 stories per episode, so it is an anthology. Nice. 12 vignettes over 6 episodes, exploring the terrors from murder to the supernatural. Exploring terrors from murder to the supernatural and unexplainable, haunted doll houses, werewolves, murderous goblins, villainous trick-or-treaters, the dead, and medical marvels. Okay, are just a few of the things to watch out for in this new series. You never know what will be on the next page. Now, I'm actually really interested to see what the Creep, kind of like the Creepshow's version of the Crypt Keeper. I'm very interested to see what he looks like now. Is it like a fully articulated puppet? I hope it's a puppet. Puppets are great. Haunted dollhouses, werewolves, murderous goblins, villainous trick-or-treaters, the dead, and medical marvels. That doesn't seem to fit as cleanly in that sequence, but it's fine. All right, Creepshow. Let's check it out. I've been sitting here with the camera rolling for about a full minute. Not quite sure how to begin. I liked it overall. It's uneven. There's a lot of things that I like about it, and a few things that just don't quite work. That's really holding it back. So we got 2 stories. Both stories are pretty good. Have a lot of really good stuff in them. But each one has something that kind of holds it back and leaving you with a, oh man, that was so good. Let me cover a couple of unimportant things. The Creep is a puppet. This is good. It's a bad puppet, though. It's like laughably bad. I mean, it's surprisingly bad. Luckily, it's not there much. It pretty much just looks at the camera and laughs, and that's about it. Thank goodness, because it's just really bad. I mean, the design is fine, but I think really where it's going wrong is the puppeteering. It performs like the people controlling the animatronics in the face, the mouth movements, the eye movements, and the blinking, just have the remote and are just kind of randomly jiggling joysticks and pushing buttons. Because it's blinking and eye moves and mouth working. It just seems kind of random. It doesn't appear to be a performance of any sort. The Crypt Keeper from the Tales from the Creepshow in the 90s was much more convincing. Now, granted, that was a character, and that goes a long way to bringing a puppet to life. This is just a model that just kind of stands there and looks at you for... Now, granted, the creep in the original movie just kind of stood outside a window and leered at you. And it wasn't any more or less articulate than this one, but it was puppeteered with its limitations understood. It didn't just move its eyes and mouth randomly. It's just not a very good puppet. Actually, I guess the puppet's fine. Maybe they just didn't have money to do anything particularly elaborate, which, okay, I mean, it's not the focus of the show, the important part of the actual stories. But I honestly would have just left it out, because there are some really wonderful animated comic book panels that the Creep features in, and that's cool. Just do that, because this puppet is embarrassingly bad, guys. Which is strange, because there is a partially practical, at least I think so, monster in the first one that's really good. I think it's mostly practical guy in suit / animatronic with some CG enhancements, and it's really cool looking. The opening of the show, the title and the credits, really cool. Kudos to to the folks behind that opening credit sequence. That is beautiful. I really like it. So the first story has Adrienne Barbeau in it, which is great. Also Tobin Bell, which is also great. Adrienne Barbeau she was in the first Creepshow. She's in Swamp Thing, Escape from New York, lots of stuff from the 80s. And Tobin Bell plays Jigsaw. So, it's about a kid who is raised by his widower of a father who can't deal with the loss of his wife, so he turns to booze. And soon his thirst extends beyond the drink. And so this kid comes into there's a storm going on, and the kid comes into a convenience store where Tobin Bell and Adrienne Barbeau and the other guy are sitting around playing cards, and he's coming by to pick up beer for his daddy. And they can tell that this kid is like scared and disturbed by something, so Tobin Bell plays the town police officer, and other guy who's the town doctor decide to take the beer home and talk to his daddy, see what's going on, while he stays behind and regales Adrienne Barbeau with what's been going on. And so the show switches between a kind of a flashback of his father's turn to booze and then his father's turn. And Tobin Bell and other guy go into the house and finding it dilapidated and people missing and things like that. So, Daddy has turned into a people-eating monster, essentially. And the boy would do anything for his daddy, and, always brought him beer, but now he's bringing him people, which is why he let Tobin and other guy go. So, what struck me the most about this one was it was just really well shot. Both episodes the cinematography is really, really good. There's an extended sequence in this first episode where Tobin Bell and the other guy are wandering around this house with nothing but a flashlight. And it's not done how you see it in a lot of movies where they just kind of pretend it's dark and the actors just kind of do this, but they can clearly see because it's clearly not very dark. No, it is pitch black, and it's lit by almost nothing but the practical flashlight that the actors are holding, and a couple, probably like some bounce boards and stuff to make sure the light's reflecting right. But it truly comes off as two guys wandering around in the pitch blackness. It's really well done, but it still manages to keep an excellent sense of space, of geography, of location between the two characters. You always know which one's Tobin Bell and which one's other guy. Sorry, actor, I don't recognize you, but you're great. Which character's which character, where they are in relation to each other. It is impressively well done. To shoot a scene in genuine darkness and have it be that clear. So kudos. And then they run into Daddy Monster, and one of them gets at, and then climax, and then done. So one of the characters gets eaten, and the other one's against the wall going, no, that kind of a thing. And then it cuts to the store where the survivor guy is now there. The guy, no, that guy, he's now in the store. And Adrienne Barbeau is frantically banging away at an adding machine. And I was like, is this a montage? The characters, the monster is eating everyone in town, and people are, and she's making sales because they're getting supplies to get out of town, which is weird because everyone's already out of town and had already cleaned her out, so what the hell is she doing? Turns out she's using her adding machine to calculate how soon Daddy Creature is going to consume the entire world. 6 days, as it turns out. And then Daddy Creature busts through the ceiling and grabs one of the characters and yanks him up through the ceiling. It feels like there's a scene missing. It's really jarring. Suddenly characters are in a different location and she's doing something, you don't understand what she's doing, and then you understand what you're doing and you don't know why she's doing that, or by what data she's using to come to the conclusion that this monster who only one person has witnessed I don't know how she's making those calculations. I mean, it's not really important. The important fact is this thing's going to eat the world in 6 days. But it does feel like we've missed some transitional scene here. Because it's just, suddenly we're here, we're ad machine, oh no, everything, and I got pulled through the roof and the episode's over. Still not a bad episode. There's a lot I like about it, but the ending is weird. It genuinely feels like there's a scene missing. So the second episode, which I think is probably stronger than the first, is about a little girl who, has a giant dollhouse. I'm talking like that big. I mean, huge dollhouse. And she has a little family, the Smiths, or something like that. Mom, dad, little boy, and dog. And she poses them in the house. And one day she looks in the house, and the Smiths are not in the position she left them in. And she's like, why did you move? You're not supposed to move. She doesn't seem terribly weirded out by that, more annoyed that the her dolls are not in the position she left them in. But she also notices there's a head in her dollhouse. A doll head, a small, scaled to the rest of the dolls, but just a kind of decayed zombie-looking head with a bloody stump for a neck. Just sitting there on the dining room table. And she's like, who are you? You're not supposed to be there. And so the premise of this particular episode is every time she looks, the dolls are all in a different position, and the head is sometimes like, where did it go? What does it want? What is it doing? And she looks at her dolls and she says, I think your house is haunted. Yeah. And the haunted house is in your house, little girl. But it is a really another short with an episode with really good cinematography. The way the camera shoots through the house, capturing the information in the dollhouse that you need, while getting the reaction of the little girl, and keeping a very clear geography, lay of the land, sense of space of the dollhouse, so you always know where each room is in relation to the other. Really, really well done. The parents are there. Their characters are... God, they don't do anything? I mean, the story doesn't really require them to, but they're so nothing that they almost... They kind of pulled me out of the show because they just have no... They could have been, Charlie Brown, just off screen, just voices you hear. Susie, or Evie, that's her name, come down to dinner. You didn't really need the mom and dad there, because they don't do anything. So the little girl, she buys a police officer doll and puts it in there, and when she comes back home from school, the police officer doll's head is missing. So she goes to the doll shop and she's like, "Do you have a rabbi or a priest or something?" Says, "How about a Native American? They're very spiritual." And she's like, "I dig it." And so she puts the Native American dude in there, and he gets decapitated too. And so she reaches into the dollhouse and she grabs the head and she throws. Oh, I'm sorry. Then the Smith spoilers. The Smiths are all decapitated. Even little Ethan, the young child. I think the dog survives. I guess the dog just pissed off at some point. Either that or it's lying dead somewhere, and I just didn't notice. So she looks in there, and Ethan's standing there with the corpse head has replaced Ethan's head. And she grabs him and she yanks it off and she throws it across the room, puts Ethan back in the dollhouse, and she's like, "That head should not be in my room." So she digs under her bed to find it, because she's got a bunch of stuffed toys under her bed, like we all do. And she finds it, and it's no longer doll size. It's like this size. It's like human head size. And this brave little woman, who is not particularly perturbed by her haunted dollhouse, more annoyed by it than anything else, just grabs this huge bloody head and stuffs it back in her dollhouse. And then she sells her dollhouse in a yard sale. The end. And you might be thinking, that's it? Yeah, so was I. I was sitting there thinking, ooh, where is this gonna go? Is she going to, is the head going to be loose in her real house and menace her family? Is she going to deal with that by pulling the dog out of the dollhouse and into the real world, and she gets a real dog to fight off the head? Is it going to turn out that the whole side of her house opens up and it's a giant little girl, and her house is actually a dollhouse, and it's like Inception or Mastroika doll levels of dollhouses? There's so many different things you could do, but she's like, "Nah, screw this. I've had enough of this haunted dollhouse crap. I'm selling it in a yard sale." Protein shake, if you're wondering. So, not the strongest ending. I mean, it's the obvious ending. It's the realistic, so to speak, ending. I think that's what we do. You know how you always yell at horror movies? Why don't you call the police? Why don't you just leave? Why don't you get rid of the haunted dollhouse? Because it doesn't make for a very good movie or story. Right? If characters acted reasonably, you generally would not have much of a story. And this story, which is really good throughout its runtime, with some stuff that's just not working, like the parents, and then she sold the dollhouse and never had to worry about it again. The end. Okay. So Greg Nicotero is the showrunner. The first one, the Daddy Monster one, was a short story written by Stephen King. It's uneven. It's got some questionable creative choices, but it's got a lot of stuff that I really did like. So, will I watch episode 2? Yes. Yes, I will, unless my internet goes out and never comes back. That would suck. But, uneven, but there's still several, what did they say, 6 episodes total, 12 vignettes, 6 episodes, so we got 5 more of these to go. That's the thing about anthology movies and anthology stories, collections of shorter stories, is you have your weaker ones. What was interesting here is that neither story was the weak one. They were both pretty good. they both just have really questionable decisions that kept them from being as good as they could have been. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a consistent problem throughout the rest of the series. It'll be interesting to see if they do anything with the creep puppet thing. Oh, they occasionally do some comic book panel transitions, which are pretty cool. The animated bits, the comic booky stuff, that's all really gorgeously done. Really like that. So again, a lot of stuff I really like. Some stuff I don't like that's kind of holding it back, but enough I like that I will definitely be tuning in. I guess it's weekly next week for episode 2. So have a lovely day.